Always said to my family and to others, if Idaho ever calls, I'm there. I always introduce myself as a proud Idahoan. I'm a graduate of Madison High School. I was born in Salt Lake, but grew up here and love this state dearly. You'll see in what I talk about what I believe is truly the Idaho advantage, and I want to talk to you about that today. So really grateful that I could be here. My friend Brandon Lee, city councilman in Idaho Falls, there he is right there. So grateful that you're here as well. He probably knows the old joke. How do you know a guy went to Harvard? Anybody know the answer? He'll tell you, right? It gets worse for me, by the way. How do you know a guy went to Oxford? His butler will tell you. It's terrible. Please don't hold that against me. That I come from roots. I went to Ricks College. I loved it. Then I went overseas. I serve with the UK government today as their consul for the state of Utah. And we'll talk about giving back a little bit. I want to jump through these slides pretty quickly today because I really want to leave this open for questions, for Q&A. I want you to be thinking about this as we're talking today. And Carolyn touched on this a bit. I know that Ryan, and thank you, Ryan, for having me and hosting us today. This is truly a thrill for me. But as we're here, I want you to remember that ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is everything. I meet so many people in the course of our business that want to talk, or what we call, at least at our firm, play business. They're one of the many people that Ryan just described, that they're playing business. They talk about the books that they read, the things that they're studying, the people that they've networked with. But the reality is execution. That doing is everything. And I think that's really what the Idaho advantage is. I've often said that people, not potatoes, are Idaho's greatest export. And you can see how this works, going straight down I-15 into Utah. And we've benefited from that. I certainly have. I have had Utah Jazz tickets for a couple decades with these three other people. On the bottom there, on the bottom left, Duff Thompson calls us the Super Spuds. We're all from Idaho. We've stuck together, but you can see it's outside of this kid right here. Pretty impressive bunch. Blake Monarzycki, you may know him, runs Paleon. Just retired, he didn't retire, but retired in investment, returned about $2 billion to his LPs through a Cloudflare investment. Pretty meaningful visionary in our ecosystem there, Cameron Gunter and Peg Development, what they built in $1 billion fund. And then Duff Thompson, chairman of Qualtrics. You may have heard of that little company called Qualtrics. Might have afforded a certain person the amounts to go buy up the Utah Jazz, now the Utah Mammoth. But this was the chairman, Duff Thompson, from right here in Pocatello. And then myself from Rexburg, Idaho. And what we've been able to do, I noted PetIQ was $1.5 billion of equity, about $500 million of assumed debt for $2 billion enterprise value in what they were able to do. It's the fastest ride to $1 billion I had ever experienced, and served as chairman there. But that's just a small sample of those that you've seen that have come from Idaho, gone someplace else where there's capital and opportunity. Duff started out at WordPerfect. You may remember that WordPerfect and Novell, at the time, they're in Provo, Utah, were the largest software companies in the world. Is that mind-blowing to think about that? That 40 years ago, the largest software companies in the world were located in that little valley, and it started from there. Because it takes that intellectual capital to stick around and reinvest. And what you've seen then over the decades is that reinvestment in that community. And that's what I want to talk about today here in Idaho and how that works. Just a small smattering of some of the portfolio companies, all with Idaho DNA. I've already mentioned PetIQ. Montagen, founded by an Idaho boy named Dr. David Beers. If you know anything about life science and those who are developing it, he is probably the most respected in cancer and Alzheimer's and now in weight loss in terms of a researcher and a leader there. He will likely have 3, maybe 4 different exits, all above $1 billion in the next 12 months alone. Remarkable individual from Idaho, married to a fellow Rexburger, if I can say. Clearlink, of course, the impetus of that company that I built and started, my last name is Clarke, my wife's maiden name is Earl. We came together. Clearlink was born in 2001, just right after in the middle of the dot-com bubble bursting. 6 weeks after 9/11, built that company called Clearlink, went back to run Clearlink in what I'll perhaps talk about a little bit later. those 4 years coming back to a company that you had built, that was perhaps the most challenging decade of my life in 4 years. We're grateful for what that was for us. It generates billions of dollars in brand revenue for our brand partners there. BioLexis, a company that we're part of, again, Dr. David Beers, and then Boardco, where we have operations here in the state of Idaho as a boat retailer that does about $100 million in revenue. So amongst those and amongst the portfolio companies that we've built, I think we're generating about $5 billion a year in recurring annual revenue in those businesses. But here's the Idaho advantage, played out very simply. Weighing potatoes against bees for a second. If I'm showing you what it is, so you know the answer, the largest company in the state of Utah, you probably wouldn't have guessed it if I had given you 100 guesses. You've all seen extra space storage, the green signs, probably on the side of a freeway. That right there, a non-technology company, is the largest company in the state of Utah, by a long shot. You heard about Qualtrics and the $12.5 billion exit. There are other publicly traded companies in Utah, of course, that you know of. But you've got a $500 billion behemoth here in the state of Idaho. I remember as a high school student touring the Micron facility, seeing what they had done, and I never would have imagined the growth that they've gone through and experienced. That's part of that Idaho advantage. Year after year, decade after decade, building something really, truly remarkable on a global platform, a global stage. But what they've done on that side of the state, which we're still looking to do on this side of the state in eastern Idaho, is reinvest in that community. The J.R. Simplots, the Albertsons, and the founders of Micron. Well, they were the primary stakeholders there, reinvesting in that community. What we need right now to match the grit, grind, and gumption that I know that everybody in this room has. The reality is if you've worked on a farm, like I did from age 12 and beyond here in Idaho, everything is easier. You don't have to pull dirt out of your ears at the end of the day when you're working in tech or networking or doing what you're doing in your business. Everything is easier, but that's the Idaho advantage. You've heard about LDS mission leaders thanking those young Idaho farm kids as they come in to do the hard work of being those servant leaders. They're good, hard-working people, just like each one of you are who have had the opportunity to be here in the state of Idaho. So please forgive the I think Ryan called it the AI that I leveraged here in this. I think we'll soon and someday call that more than just AI. This is technology. Remember the dot-com boom and bust? We don't call companies dot-coms any longer. We won't talk about generative AI this way. It's just technology that makes things better. But these are some of the things about building companies in Idaho that makes them great. I've always said that it is every problem that I experience, as well as every great thing in business, has a first and a last name. Have you felt that pain? Have you felt that benefit? Every challenge that I have faced ever, it's not the business problem that I've struggled with. They're the people problems. It's always about the person, the good and the bad. So first and last name there. Building world-class companies that you're able to do. Then reinvesting in education, reinvesting in the ecosystem. I run what is called, by Wall Street standards, a family office. All that means is it's my own money that is being allocated into these businesses. Our firm has allocated or raised about $2 billion thus far. More importantly, and we don't talk about this much, is what we give back. We're already allocating, or at least committing to dollars that we will give back in our communities in years to come, in addition to the amounts that we've already been involved with. So giving back is a big part of that, not just reinvesting and investing in the next generation of entrepreneurs, but investing in your community, doing the things that people perhaps won't appreciate as much, but those who are the most in need are benefiting from because you're an entrepreneur. And then just again, this corridor of capital, it is there. There is capital in the state of Utah, but please do me a favor. Allow us to be the first to look at your businesses. Anybody can come to you when your business is successful. Once you've crossed the threshold into profitability or beyond, anybody can talk to you then. And they will, and they'll chase you down. But I live and die, and so many others like me, by the quality of deal flow that we see in our office. And we see such high-quality deal flow from the state of Utah. And I'm telling you, it used to be a little more like that in the state of Utah. It was these great deals at very low prices. And if you look at now the housing market in the state of Utah, it's caught up with Silicon Valley pretty well. You're seeing some of that here in Idaho, but the reality is still great cost of living, wonderful place to raise a family, great place to start a business, access to capital on this corridor, or going to the coast. But my invitation to everybody in this room is keep the dollars here in your community. Reinvest the way that we talked about Novell and WordPerfect from decades ago, that they reinvested in their communities or donated into their communities. Thanksgiving Point is a perfect example of that. If you know this, on the I-15 corridor right there, the 1,000 acres that was bought by Karen Ashton and Dr. Ashton to give Thanksgiving Point back to this community. That's the great gift that they gave, even as they were larger than what is Microsoft and so many other multi-trillion-dollar businesses today. So the invitation to replant and reinvest in Idaho, because this is ours, and I still consider myself part of this community. The state of Utah has given me a lot, but I am who I am, and we've done what we've done because of Idaho, and you have a great advantage at this. And as you are reinvesting and giving back, anybody can go sit on a beach and take your kids during spring break, and you might think that that's the height of what this is. It might be an airplane you want to own someday or a certain car you want to buy, but I am telling you the best part of all of what you'll see when you see the kind of success that I think so many of you are seeking or perhaps have already seen is giving back and doing that and showing your family how you're able to do that. Last week, and I'll say this, I was at about 12,500 feet in Peru with my family in a village where people don't see outsiders come in, and where we sat with those who literally could not see before they walked into a little surgery with surgeons from their home country, and they pulled out what looked like a small or a half raisin out of their eyes, and they walked out of that clinic being able to see. That's the reward of being able to do what you're doing. That's why what you're doing, as you look at it, is perhaps the hardest thing on planet Earth. If you want to build a rocket and be a rocket scientist, there's a path for that. If you want to be a brain surgeon and you want to know all there is about the brain and be world-class in that, if you have the aptitude, you can do that. There's a great track for that at many different universities and beyond. But to do what you're doing, build a first-of-a-kind business that nobody's ever built before, or do the things that you're doing within your current business, is perhaps the hardest thing in the world. There's no manual for it. There's no way to understand which partner is the right partner. How much capital do you raise? When do you do that? When do you mortgage your home? How many credit cards can you max out? Anybody been there? I've been there. How do you do this? And I promise you, at every level, it's the same. It's the same sort of traps that are there for you. It doesn't get easier. Yes, you have more access to capital, but the problems just keep getting bigger and bigger. Some of you have seen that. And I would venture to say in this group, if you haven't already started what is to be $1 billion business, there are those among us here in this room that will. I believe in it. The odds say that that's the case. And because you're here in this special place that I love, Idaho, I believe you'll be able to do that. But as you're doing that, if you're not giving back along the way, you won't get back at all. So please, as you're doing this and building, give when it's hard. If you listen to the great stories of wonderful entrepreneurs that have really been able to give back, they were giving back when it was hard. Larry and Gail Miller talk about doing that when they were building their first operation and enterprise in selling cars before buying the Jazz and becoming the $5 billion family that they are today. It was when they couldn't even make payroll and they had to leverage certain things that they were able to give back and do more. So that's my invitation. As you do this, certainly there are great blessings, there are great also trappings of success, and they're called that for a reason, as we've talked about some of those things. So avoid those and focus on what I think really brings the joy in this journey, and that is giving back. And I hope you're all extremely successful in your efforts and what you're doing, because you've got this Idaho advantage in all that you're doing. Don't think about other states, the coast, the left coast, the right coast, and that we're just this flyover state in between. No, there's something really special here. Growing up in Rexburg, Idaho, I was able to watch a woman named Sybil Ferguson. Now, that name might not mean anything to any of you here, but this was my aunt. And I was very much a have-not amongst haves, watching this woman build a company in the diet business. You all know Jenny Craig. You've heard of Nutrisystem. Those businesses came out of Diet Center that was built in the 70s and 80s in Rexburg, Idaho, one of the largest employers there outside of the university. And I watched being a have-not amongst haves. She had a 20-acre lawn. She had a helicopter landing pad there in her backyard. Again, this kid that had never seen anything like that, but it inspired me to watch and see what she did. But the best part about her is nephew calls and says, my junior high needs new lockers. You got it, new lockers show up. We need a new sound system. She gave back. The field that what was the old Madison High School is named in their honor because they gave back. Those are the things that you'll do to inspire others by giving back. They'll remember your success in business. You know people like Todd Peterson, our Idaho Falls friend, that's generated and built billions of dollars of businesses. He was my first boss after having served a 2-year mission in the Dominican Republic. He taught me about this. In fact, he taught me in the hardest time. His business went under that first year. It was called CMC. Talked to him about it. This was the summer of 1994. And I worked for him. I was his top rep, and I got half of my paycheck. Well, what did Todd Peterson do? He said, you start your own business, competitive in nature, inside of my own office. I'll give you an office. And that gift right there was worth its weight in gold, and I attribute everything that we've done in our lives and in my business career to the generosity of that man. And he's still the same, by the way. If you know Todd, some of you do here from Idaho Falls, he's the same person, having built the Vivint companies and so forth. Same guy. Picks up the phone, talks to you, and is as good as they come. And I admire that so greatly, and I hope that I'm that same person as we're still here sort of with a chip on our shoulders trying to make things work amidst the billions of dollars that I think we've generated in business. I'm so glad that none of you know me, or some of you might know me, because we try to keep it that way, but the reality is we depend on you, as I've already said before, your businesses. So know that you, with your advantage of grit, grind, and gumption, are those that we're looking for, and we hope we get to know many of you in our office at Clarke Capital and in all that we do. So congratulations on all of your success and all that you're doing. I want to take some questions. I've got about half of my time left that I can throw around this talk box of sort so that you can talk right into it. It's got a microphone in it.
It's got a microphone right here. So
and I want to talk to you a little bit about questions you might have, struggles you're facing. We have a saying in our office, we want to eat our veggies before we have dessert. We want to talk about the challenges first and foremost, even before we talk about the good. There's always plenty of good to talk about. But let's talk about veggies. What are some of the challenges you're facing? And maybe there's the collective wisdom of this room that we can talk through. But please, who's brave enough?
We'll be our first one to try.
See your hand right here.
Here we go.
Right in the middle.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but not on a microphone.
There you go.
I kind of retooled my company around artificial intelligence. So we retooled, and then that the market's not quite there yet. What do you advise for businesses when you know something is coming, and you're positioning yourself to take advantage of that, but you're not. You got to kind of play the waiting game.
So you can be bleeding edge, and you can sometimes get there too fast, right? Which we've seen a lot of companies get there a little too fast, a little too early, and timing is everything. And this is where, you want to lean on somebody a lot smarter than me to have that conversation. I don't know enough about your business to be able to comment on that specifically, but remember.
In general, if you're, how do you kind of wait out for the market?
Well, it's always better, I would say, to be too early than too late, but be careful about that bleeding edge and being one of those early entrants into a category. Again, we've missed a lot of SaaS opportunities. You should know that our firm focuses primarily in consumer, tech-enabled consumer. All of my SaaS colleagues and friends, my friends in Silicon Valley, those in Silicon Slopes, they're panicking right now. They don't know quite what to make of these businesses that they put this great fence and moat around. Suddenly the moat's gone, thanks to AI. So you're building something pretty remarkable. But remember what I'd said earlier. We're going to talk about AI a little bit like we had talked about .com. It's just part of everybody's company, and it should be part of everybody's company. But if you can build your own moat with AI, you're going to be in great shape. So build that moat, and that's what I would do so that somebody can't come through and take it. Our experience is I officed in the same building that was the Pluralsight headquarters. I don't know if you know that one. They're in Draper above where the old prison is, point of the mountain. Clearlink was there. I was running the business. They had built this headquarters to house about 6,000 people altogether. When I showed up, they had about 20 people showing up in office every day. Some of you who know me know that I was canceled globally for talking about Idaho values in our business to try to bring people back to the office. I did it with compassion and with care, but they didn't like it. We had to ultimately, didn't want to remove any of our company, but we had to cut it in half from 1,200 people to about 600 people. And we did better because of that. Listen, watch out for being bleeding edge, but use that leverage that you've got right now in the front edge of technology. So good luck to you. Thanks.
Who else has a question?
Please.
Yes.
Go ahead and start talking while you're waiting for the box.
Sure.
Please.
A question for me, for some companies I consult with, and I know some in here that I've talked to.
Great.
Needing to grow,
Yeah.
but your earnings are, you're doing well in your business, but your earnings won't fund you to grow. What are some of the practical tools and resources and methods for growing, such as small business loans, or to be able to make that next step to a bigger company?
Yeah. Really great question. Really appreciate you talking about that. I think you probably know the answer to a lot of those things if you're advising the companies, but SBA is a great option and an opportunity. We've used that in many of our portfolio companies. We were very, very debt averse. But as you bring on equity partners, think of debt, even expensive debt, as cheap equity versus expensive debt, because there's no financing that's less expensive than even expensive debt is in this process. So SBA is a great tool. But one thing that if I could go back in time, especially with our Clearlink transaction, which was sort of our first major transaction, which took place in 2011, 9 figures. We were very grateful that we sort of held on to the whole thing ourselves, didn't bring in financing, didn't bring in exterior partners. So we were grateful. But at the end, I believe we could have built that into a business 10 or 20 times larger had I had the intellectual capital that so many advisors like yourself and others bring with that. So it's always about how do you make the pie bigger, right? It's not the slice of the pie, it's how big that pie is itself. And so we'd love to bring in equity partners in our deals because we know that we're not only getting money, and I hope people think, okay, money is money. It's not. And everybody thinks they're probably being smart, and they are smart money in this. Maybe so, but not all partners are created equal, and so many will make your lives so much harder than they need to be. So pick those partners wisely, pick them selectively, but talk to many. Those who have done very, very well are talking about investment capital long before they need it, because once you need it, it's too late. It's too late because your back is up against the wall. So start talking about those things early. One of the things that I really admire about Ryan Smith and him building Qualtrics and doing what he did is he started talking to those world-class venture groups, Sequoia and Excel, years before he ever needed the money. So they knew him when he came 2 years later and said, okay, it's time. He didn't even need the money at that point. It was just, how do I bring in smart money that will give me what we call the halo effect as enterprise value in our business? And that's what they did. So it's a great story about asking for it way in advance. So talk to everybody about that and the opportunities. And the trick is, if you ask for advice, you'll get money. If you ask for money, you'll probably get advice.
Who has another question? Here we
Please,
go.
on this side. Just go ahead and blurt it out while you're waiting for the box. I think you in the white, you were first.
With your experience meeting so many founders and then seeing how it plays out in terms of success to failure, I'd be curious about maybe what are the 2 or 3 non-qualitative characteristics that you feel like really define those who succeed from those who do not?
That is an exceptional question. I couldn't possibly give you the right answer, but let me venture a guess at the way that we look at this. We bet on horses far more than we bet even on the race. And we're very interested in the right race, categories that are interesting, that are not going away. We talked a little bit about Pluralsight that I office with and the few number of employees. Well, that business was acquired for just under $4 billion, I think $3.5 billion or so. The firm that acquired them decided to walk away from everything. They had about $750 million of debt, and they said, I'm going to walk away from billions of dollars in this. How do you choose? Because on paper, it looked successful. It looked like they were going to do great things. And those founders made out like bandits, but the market didn't in the end. It's these defensible businesses run by world-class operators. And that's that grit and grind and gumption that I talked about. So we were as much psychologists looking at those that we're investing in as we are sort of professional bettors, like it is out in the casino here at Shoshone-Bannock. The reality is we're placing bets every single day. But the reality in our business is because we're a little more growthy in that growthy stage. As you know, there's sort of angel investing, which is an important part of the ecosystem. There's then venture, early stage, pre-revenue sometimes, or early revenue idea, it's sort of baking. And then there's guys like us in growth equity. We invest in growth equity. It's sort of Series B and beyond. You've hit your stride. You're probably cash flow break even or a little bit profitable. That's where we come in. And then you've got large private equity. And those are the decabillion or centabillion-dollar funds that are out there, and some that are even $1 trillion fund and beyond. So that's sort of how we look at things, but it's always about the horse in that race as much as it is the race itself. How do you do that? Boy, I wish I had my crystal ball. It's a great question. But it is always about those relationships and a little bit of proven experience. Right next to you. Thanks. Great question.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we operate in an industry that is currently facing a private equity takeover. And our current goal...
Do you want to tell us what industry that is for everybody?
Yeah,
okay?
It's independent automotive repair. So we are currently positioning our company to be attractive for a private equity sale down the road.
Okay.
But where you operate a family office, could you touch on kind of the differences between positioning ourselves for partnership with a family office rather than a private equity sale?
Well, it wouldn't be so different, I would say, other than their access to capital. Remember, it's a family office, it's our own money, and we might do a club deal and bring other people involved in it. But can I ask you a question? Why would you not consider your own sort of roll-up rather than just positioning yourself?
Yeah, and we definitely are. We're looking at mergers and acquisitions and growth in our own sphere. Yeah, but to be 100% honest with you, I don't think we want to be as attractive as possible, but I don't think we've necessarily picked a path yet.
Sorry, say that last part again.
I don't think we've picked a path yet.
Okay, of how to go about that. Mm-hmm. This is where that talking and networking and having those discussions is going to come in handy for you, because I believe on its face what you're doing is a great opportunity from the 5 seconds I heard of you sort of describing this. But I would also position yourself to be the acquirer. That's the one thing that disappoints me a little bit about the ecosystem that I experience and live in the state of Utah. The first $1 billion offer, people say, okay, I'll take that, rather than positioning themselves to be the $500 billion Micron that has just stuck around instead of, going out and being acquired by the next. They have stuck around the hoop and made a really great business over time. And it depends on what your appetite is. And I know what it feels like to have 99% of my net worth tied up in one singular asset. But if I knew now what I didn't know then in 2011 selling Clearlink, I wouldn't have sold the business at all. I would have stayed in that business. I probably would have done a debt recap. I probably could have pulled as much money off the table as I took to sell the thing in debt, paid it off, and then continued to grow the business because we were just starting to get our stride. We were 8 figures of EBITDA, and it was mostly E. It was going straight to the bottom line. It was a great business that has struggled in recent years. So look at those kinds of things, and I think adding some technology is going to be a big part of what you're doing if you haven't already, because you can add asymmetry in your business with technology and what is out there being offered versus what is probably a very blue-collar operation. We do that in our boat business, and it's been a blessing. When I talk about extra space storage, the single largest stakeholder in that $30 billion business has been my mentor for the last 30 years. That is a man who's taken technology and put it in his business. When he was a mission leader out in Virginia, he reported to a guy named Bill Marriott. You all know Marriott Hotels, son of J. Willard Marriott. He asked him, because he said, I just took this company public, and we are building and developing storage units so we can own them. Well, Bill Marriott thinks about this, meets up with him, a couple weeks later and says, so why are you trying to own them? We make far more money in our business at Marriott by managing other people's assets. We don't take on the risk, we don't develop, and it's instant. And oh, by the way, we get to see how well they perform. And if they perform super well above market, we acquire them because they've got the technology. And that's how extra space storage has been built. They've acquired these first by managing other people's assets and then acquired the best ones, and that's how they've grown to this $30 billion behemoth. That's a way you can use technology to that asymmetric advantage in your business as well, where it's traditionally a little more blue collar. So hope that's helpful. Others, please. I got to go to Brandon Lee because I begged for him to help
Okay, we
me
got
out.
one right here.
Sorry, right behind you.
Oh,
we'll take you right.
take you
Go
next.
next. You go first.
Yeah, my question's about this. So would you rather have a company that is going from to $10 million market cap in an extra year or two, prioritizing an ethos of being lean and sustainable and durable in the revenue by being more selective in hiring, having better SOPs, more margin, at the cost of growth and speed? I guess what would be the priority? Like, becoming a unicorn in 10 years, or is it becoming a sustainable company in the short term?
I think the case studies are being played out in the market right now. You've seen those that have just been chasing top line, forgetting about bottom line. And again, I passed on so many of those. So you're asking one person what I've done. Like I said, I've probably missed out on billions of dollars by staying true to our discipline. I think that's, the greats like a Warren Buffett and others have done the same, buying world-class businesses that are performing rather than making bets on shifts in the market. We're really happy about that today. I've not been very happy about it the past decade, as I think we've missed out on a lot. So it's a it depends answer. Not knowing the business, not knowing the situation. I think you as an operator, especially if you're a control operator, are always going to be happy that you're focused on growth that's measured and acceleration that's measured that has EBITDA in that and earnings and real cash flow within a business. So it certainly depends. It's a longer conversation that I'd love to have with you. So thanks so much for the question. Appreciate that. Brandon Lee from Idaho Falls. Give him a round of applause, the city councilman. If you want to get something done in Idaho Falls, pro-business. And what do they say about Darden grads? If you went to Darden Business School, do you tell everybody to, or do I have to tell everybody?
That's all on you. Thank you.
One of the smartest guys I know.
Well, very kind. My question, James, I've known you for a lot of years.
Decades.
And I want to talk to you more about giving, because that really is a concept that you have demonstrated, I think, throughout your life, long before you were even successful. I remember when we were in college together, you had about $150 to your name. I had nothing to my name. My car got booted, and I needed $100. I didn't have it, and you just gave it to me. Didn't even ask any questions, never expected it in return. You may not even remember that.
Don't remember this.
And
but so glad they got that boot off your car, though.
Me too. Yes. And so my question is how have you been able to really build in that concept of giving when it is hard?
It's a really generous question, really generous opening, and I hope we can live up to what you've just stated there. But for me, we're already making commitments the next sort of, and if I can share in this room, I think we've allocated $60 million in the last 10 years from our family. And now that, for us, I promise you, I've never spent $60 million on our family or what we do. This is about giving back to communities and those that are generally unseen. So most of what I think we've done, and I'm sorry to share that, I only say that to give you a little bit of context to say, we had an opportunity to put that in a bank account and have an endowment and drip that out. What did we decide to do? Flood the market with as much good as we can do, because guess what? That gets me up in the morning every day. We've already made commitments on the next, about half of that same amount. That's getting us out of bed every morning to make these other companies very meaningful in what we do. I have always been hesitant to put our names on buildings and on projects, but I was convinced by a guy named Matt Holland, who was the president of UVU, as they asked us to donate there. I later served as chair of the board of trustees, but he said, if you will give and put your name on it, others will be inspired to do that. Years later, my houseboat partner, business partner, others were doing the same thing. So be measured in how you do that. We try to be sort of cautious in sharing our names in what we do. It's sort of a heads-down approach, but it is so inspirational to others as you are giving that way, that they can know the story of somebody who has something and gives back. That's what means a lot to me. So thanks for the question. I think I've got about
1 minute.
about a half a question, or I'm about it.
About
Do you have
it.
one more?
How about
Can we
1
take
minute?
One more? Okay,
Yes.
I'll be quick. Who's next? Anybody else? That was a great one to end on, though.
Oh,
Oh, right here in the back, please. Just
Okay.
shout it out.
shout it out.
They're going to pull me out of here, so.
Awesome, I'm over here. Hello.
Go, oh, so on this side. Yeah.
So kind of a spiritual question and business growth. So I'm a performance coach and I do a lot of coaching for people.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of at that 7-figure area, but I want to get to the 8 figures. And I know logically a lot of the things to do, but then I know the inspiration hits and it kind of defies all logic of like what seems could grow. I'm curious, as you've grown your business, where would you say is like the balance of a day-to-day basis on tuning into inspiration and letting inspiration guide versus what you learn from other people?
Great question. Very thoughtful question. Way longer answer than I have time for. But let me just say this. There is not a spiritual side of my life and a business side of my life and a family side of my life. It's all the same thing. If you look at your life that way, I think it'll bring you a lot of peace rather than, okay, well, I show up and do this 5, 6, 7 days a week versus being, the person who focuses on faith and on the weekend. It's all the same. Show up as your whole person in business. You'll find your way through that in answering some of these hard questions that life presents to you. Listen, really grateful to be here in my home state of Idaho. Grateful for what Idaho has given to me and what you've given me today. If you call, I will answer. So please pick up the phone. Like I said, I depend far more on you than you would on me with your great ideas, your exceptional businesses, and you're building them right here. May you be successful in all that you do, in every side of your life and in all that you're doing. And thank you so much for having me today.
What a fantastic